Welcome to week 5. In week 5, I have posted the study guide for exam 1, and I wanted to take each of you through that study guide so you'll know exactly what I'm expecting for your exam 1. First, exam 1. Exam 1 will be available on Friday, February 28th. The exam opens at 12:01 a.m. and closes at 11:59 p.m. And once you enter that exam, you will have 2 hours in which you can take it. So let's go ahead and go to week 5, and let's go pull up that study guide. From the landing page, go to the course content, click on that, and scroll down to the very bottom where the exam 1 prep, which is your study guide. The file is listed here. Go ahead and click on that file. This is several pages of the study guide, and please note that I give you all of the answers to the test. You just don't know how I'm going to ask the questions. So let's go over section by section so we can determine how to best study for this exam. Part 1 is a map exercise. There were 2 maps in your interactive lectures. The first map was an interactive lecture 1. It gave places in Europe that you had to identify based on the content of the first week of this course. And the second interactive map was in week 2, and that was the 13 colonies. One of these 2 maps will be on your first exam. The second part of the exam is that I give you 10 events. You will have to put those 10 events in sequential order, 1 being the earliest, 10 being the most recent. As you study these events, look at the dates and be able to put those in sequential order when you come into the test. What will happen when you're in the exam, I will give you the events and you will have to number them 1 through 10. The third part of the exam is the term part. I give you about 32 terms here on the exam study guide. You will have to look up the definitions to each of these terms. All of those definitions can be found in the interactive lecture or throughout the course work that I've presented thus far in the semester. On the exam, I will supply the definition. You will have to supply the term. There is no word bank, and it is not multiple choice, so you have to know these terms well enough to be able to identify the definition when you see it. And then we'll go on to part 3. This part is your first essay on the exam. It is a prepared essay. You have 10 days to prepare it. And if you look at the question, it has to deal with the Columbus controversy that we talked about the first week. I expect you to use the material that we discussed in class. I gave you a short video. After you answer the discussion questions, go back and look at how your fellow classmates interacted with you on those discussion questions, and I expect an essay that deals with this topic. You will need to prepare that essay well before the exam. If I were a student, I'd go ahead and write a great essay. I would type it out. I would bring a copy of that essay with me into the test. You will have to retype it. You will not be able to cut and paste, so make sure you have that prepared and bring it with you into the exam. Part 5, I will take 5 of the terms on the term list. You will not know what 5 I choose until you get to this question, and you will have to write an academic essay linking those 5 terms. When you are studying for the exam, look for natural groups of 5, but it's not a hard exercise, but you will have to know the definitions well enough that when you link those terms, you'll be able to write an academic essay on the terms. Also note that you cannot link these terms together by saying they're linked through history. If you do that, that's an automatic 12 points off on your exam. I want a link. What links those terms together? You will have an opening paragraph with a thesis statement which states that link, 5 paragraphs in the body of the essay, 1 for each term, and then a concluding paragraph. Each paragraph should have transitional sentences. If you don't know what a transitional sentence is, please contact me or the Writing Center or anyone else that you might know that can define what a transitional sentence is for you. This is an in-class writing assignment, and you will need to be prepared to think quickly on your feet. Quickly, when you come into the exam, you will only be able to see 1 question at a time. You will answer the first question, which will be the map, and then you will move on to the second question. The second question will be the sequencing of events. Once you have completed that, you will move on to the third question. You cannot move back once you've submitted a question. The reason I'm telling you this is because the first 3 sections of this exam would be very easy for students to say, oh, I could just look this up as I go along. The problem with that way of thinking is that the last 2 questions are the 2 essay questions. The first 3 sections of this exam is worth 30 points. The last 2 questions are worth 70. So you have to be prepared with that knowledge in the first 3 sections before you even get into the exam, or you will waste too much time looking those questions up. So by the time you get to the last question, you're going to have time to write that essay. You only have 2 hours in which to take this test, so you need to be prepared before you come into the exam. Most students who take these type of tests are very, very nervous the first exam. It's not as hard as it sounds if you are prepared. If you are prepared, you need not fear. But if you come into this test thinking that you can wing it at the last minute, you'll fail the test. So make sure if you have any questions or any concerns that you contact me, but take this study guide, and good luck on your test.